Welcome Trinidad and Tobago to our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Let's take a look at the headlines. The central bank governor says government is no longer relying on the energy sector to jumpstart the economy. Works Minister unveils plans to introduce over 80 new crossing sites across the country and $4.2 million to purchase a dozen new ambulances for the regional health authorities. Thank you for joining us. Central Bank Governor Jawala Rambaran says government is no longer relying on the energy sector to jumpstart the economy. He was speaking on the topic strengthening financial stability in Trinidad and Tobago, staying ahead of the curve, at a breakfast seminar hosted by the Chartered Financial Accountants Society of Trinidad and Tobago at the Hyatt Regency.
On the topic of the upcoming national budget, the central bank governor says implementation of government's public sector investment program remains key to economic growth in Trinidad and Tobago. Mr. Jawala Rambaran is commending government's view of using the capital expenditure program to jumpstart the economy. He is also admitting that there are issues with its implementation and is suggesting that government look strongly into strengthening the implementation side to the PSIP. The central bank governor says the local economy has been fairly resilient against a turbulent economic environment over the last 5 years, and he adds that there have been some encouraging signs of growth in the non-energy sector. He says the country looks forward to a budget that will set the proper tone and direction for the next year in terms of some of the key challenges it is currently facing. Meanwhile, the central bank governor says the People's Partnership government has spent over $10 billion to repay policyholders in its attempt to rebuild CLECO. He adds that the new insurance bill has been drafted and will be laid in Parliament when the new term opens later this month. Vuna Bharat, News 4.
A book that will go down in history. That's how the latest Jubilee Anniversary commemorative book, Trinidad and Tobago, 50 Years of Independence, can be described. The book is a compilation of the positives of the life and times of Trinidad and Tobago and is a collaborative effort between the private sector and the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development. Overseeing editor for the publication, political analyst Dr. Hamid Ghani, describes the book as a keepsake for all.
Capturing our last 50 years so that a generation ahead will know of our past. That's what the publication titled Trinidad and Tobago, 50 Years of Independence aims to do, as it collates bits and pieces of our history into a single compilation that will surpass time. Launching the commemorative book, overseeing editor and political analyst Dr. Hamid Ghani describes the book as a collection of the many positives of this country's development, something he says should become a keepsake in every household in Trinidad and Tobago.
We wanted to ensure that we had as broad a scope as possible that could capture the life and times of Trinidad and Tobago at 50, not only looking backwards, but also with an eye to the future as well. So that we wanted a publication that in essence would say that this is who we are. This is not confined to any political point of view or perspective. And when you see the authors, they come from all walks of life and all political persuasions. So it is a publication that captures truly the spirit of Trinidad and Tobago, and I'm indeed pleased to have been associated with this.
Planning Minister Dr. Botiwari describes the book as unique, depicting the many colorful aspects that make Trinidad and Tobago the nation it is.
Something that could be treasured by the people who live here and who know the place, and something that would immediately become unique and valuable to an outsider looking at it. Nobody is paying for this. These things, this tremendous piece of work that has been produced is going to be given away. And it's going to be distributed very widely. And that is only possible because the sponsor rose to the challenge and basically paid for the publication.
Dr. Ghani says the book comes in a timely manner and remains hopeful that the book will survive numerous years to come.
When one looks at a publication like this, with all of the strands and streams that have been put together, one would then be able to say that this place called Trinidad and Tobago is indeed quite exotic, quite interesting, and a place worth taking a second look at. It came at a time in the life of this country when 50 years as a marker of time in history will allow us a moment to stop and say that this is who we were at 50 when you look back after we've gone on.
The book is one of 3 others published, which includes a pictorial collection of the many faces of Trinidad and Tobago. Published by Paria Publishing Company, Minister Tiwari says the book could not have been done without the input from citizens coming from all different walks of life. Kimberly Ramkalawan, News 4.
News 4 continues after the break. Welcome back. Citizens have no need to worry about a shortage of fuel. This is the assurance of Minister of Energy, the Honourable Kevin Ramnarine, as he addressed the nation at the post-cabinet media briefing.
Minister Ramnarine says Petrotrin employees are returning to their jobs following their recent strike action. He adds that all the key operations necessary for the production of fuel are now fully functional. This, he says, means citizens should not worry about a fuel shortage in the country currently. He is asking citizens, though, that in the event of any disruption to the fuel supply chain, that they have confidence in all fuel providers and distributors. He assures that Petrotrin and NP have contingency plans in place to deal with any disruption in local fuel supply.
I have been advised that workers have started to return to work at all departments in Petrotrin, that the bond is operational and the port is operational. NP and Unipet continue to deliver fuel to all 141 service stations across Trinidad and, I might add, Tobago, and that I wish to assure the national population that in the event of any disruption to the fuel supply chain, Petrotrin and NP have the necessary contingency plans in place to continue to deliver fuel to all service stations in the service station network, and that the population should have the confidence in Petrotrin, NP, and in fact Unipet, and their ability to deliver fuel.
He explains that one of the main reasons the employees walked off their jobs stemmed from a simple misunderstanding or possible mix-up in communication. In its strike action, the Oilfield Workers Trade Union cited government's granting of a bunkering contract to a local subsidiary of a foreign company, Bunkering International, as the reason for the action. The union says it believes this would have deprived Petrotrin of huge profits. Minister Ramnarine says, however, that no contract has yet been awarded.
With regard to the bunkering license, we met with the union for 3 hours yesterday. I indicated to the union that no license has been awarded thus far. What had happened is that the cabinet had given a conditional approval, and the award of any license by the Ministry of Energy would be subject to a due diligence being conducted by the ministry. That due diligence has not started, but the ministry intends to execute that due diligence.
Gregory McBurney, News 4.
Trinidad and Tobago has been victorious in the Deepwater Bid Round Competition 2012. 12 of the world's oil and gas companies competed against each other to search for hydrocarbons in Trinidad, in Trinidad and Tobago's deep water. However, the results reveal that TNT was most successful in more than a decade.
Speaking at the weekly post-cabinet media briefing, Energy Minister, the Honourable Kevin Ramnarine, confirmed that Trinidad and Tobago is number 1 in the Deepwater Bid Round Competition 2012. Trinidad and Tobago Deep Atlantic 5 was the most competitive, along with 4 other companies, for the right to search for hydrocarbons.
The results further demonstrate a renewal of confidence in our energy sector and a renewal of confidence and a boost to confidence in the national economy, while placing Trinidad and Tobago at the forefront of interest in the global deepwater exploration business. Bids were received on 5 out of the 6 deepwater blocks offered, and in total 12 bids were received.
Energy Minister Kevin Ramnarine says the success of the deepwater bid was due to several measures that he had undertaken since becoming Minister of Energy, not the least of which was the reprocessing of the seismic data.
There are 3 new entrants into the Trinidad and Tobago exploration and production business, and these are, first one, El Enito, Trinidad and Tobago, a joint venture between El Enito, Caspian Drilling, and SOCAR which is the state oil company of Azerbaijan. The second new entrant is Cosmos Energy of the United States. Cosmos Energy is very well known internationally as one of the two companies that discovered the giant oil field in Ghana 5 years ago. The third entrant is Kane Energy of the United Kingdom. In total, of course, 12 bids were received for this deepwater bid round, as I added. The bid round has also seen a strong showing of confidence by BG, Repsol, Centrica, and BHP Billiton, all of which already have a significant presence in Trinidad and Tobago.
The Energy Minister says the success of this bid could only be compared to the 1999 bid in which the world's major oil companies tried to find oil in deep water, specifically on the slope of the continental shelf.
Also participating in this bid round was a local company for the first time, Trinity Exploration, which is a locally owned company. They have teamed up with Kane Energy of the United Kingdom. Following the submission of bids which were made on Tuesday, the evaluation process will commence. The evaluation will be conducted by a technical evaluation committee comprising public servants of the Ministries of Energy, Finance, and the Attorney General.
The minister says the bid round was a major success and 3 new companies have already committed to bidding when the next deepwater round comes up in 2013. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
Works Minister, the Honorable Emmanuel George, has unveiled plans to introduce over 80 new crossing sites across the country and the addition of barriers along the nation's highways. Speaking at the weekly post-cabinet media briefing, the minister announced that several new infrastructural projects will commence, which will see the dredging of waterways as part of the initiative.
80 new sites will see the introduction of zebra crossings in effort to aid pedestrian traffic in key areas. Works Minister Emmanuel George made the announcement at the weekly post-cabinet media briefing.
These works involve the provision of backup power at 50 of the signalized intersections in Trinidad and Tobago. It is also to install zebra crossings and other street furniture at 80 sites in Trinidad.
The minister says it's part of government's plans to improve the infrastructural works along the many roadways across Trinidad and Tobago. The project will include the pulling of cable barriers along the Solomon Hochoy Highway and Uriah Butler Highway. He added that the highway works will cost approximately $39 million in total.
This people will be interested in because it involves the issue of deaths that have occurred as a result of vehicles leaving one side of the highway and crashing head-on with vehicles on the opposite side of the highway. They involve the installation of New Jersey-type barrier systems along the Churchill Roosevelt Highway between Mokoya and going up to O'Meara. And you would have seen some of that installation taking place, but we need money now to continue the installations of those Jersey-type barriers heading further east along this highway until we have completely covered the entire length of the highway where we're supposed to have these barriers. And also along the Churchill Roosevelt Highway, along the San Fernando bypass, we need to put some of these barriers also on the San Fernando bypass. For the Uriah Butler Highway, the intention is to install cable barriers, and along the Solomon Hochoy Highway also to install cable barriers.
He adds that while in the wake of the recent floods in western Trinidad, a lot of cleanup work was done, there still remains more to be done. This, he says, will entail the dredging of drains and other waterways throughout the country.
But there is work that needs to be done to supplement this, and those works involve the clearing of the drains and various water courses in the area, because what happened in the case of this weather event was that a lot of the hills came down in the form of mud and slush and boulders and other debris, and served to clog most of the waterways in the areas concerned. So after that first effort at clearing out people's homes, helping them to reestablish some semblance of normalcy in their lives, cleaning the streets around them and so on, we now have to clean the drains, which are all clogged. And if left alone, if we have a repeat of an event even close to the amount of rainfall that we had on that day, which measured about 4 inches in about 2 hours between 4 a.m. and 6 a.m. on the 11th. We are in for another serious destruction of infrastructure.
Gregory McBurney, News 4.
More news after the break. Stay with us. For the second year running, the Ministry of Sports Schoolers, a product of the Sports School program, has dominated an international basketball tournament. The 2012 Feria de la Consolación took place from 17th to the 24th of August in Caracas, Venezuela, and featured under-21 teams from the host country, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Dominican Republic. The Ministry of Sports Schoolers participated in the Super 10 Basketball League in 2012 with mixed results, but putting on a good show nonetheless. The team is coached by former national player Lennox Sobers and managed by Gabriel McTeer. The annual sports school program is a residential camp for talented athletes scouted from rural communities across Trinidad and Tobago. The schoolers team comprises the following athletes: Michael Jerome, Jonathan Hamilton, Jamal Spencer, Chris Nelson, Christopher John, Ceylon Williams, Jeffrey Harris, Ronell Winter, Austin Ralph, and Isaiah Wilkinson. In some news from or of athletics, Trinidad and Tobago's Lalonde Gordon repeated his performance from the London 2012 Olympics by capturing bronze at the Memorial Van Damme Diamond League meet in Brussels, Belgium. The quarter-miler from Lowlands in Tobago clocked 45.13 seconds as he came in behind hometown favorites Kevin and Jonathan Bowley, who finished in 44.75 and 45.02 respectively. That's it for sport. We take a break and come right back. $4.2 million will be used to purchase a dozen new ambulances for the regional health authorities. This comes from Health Minister Dr. The Honorable Fuad Khan, who was addressing members of the media during the weekly post-cabinet briefing.
Cabinet has approved the proposal from the Ministry of Health to purchase 12 new ambulances for the regional health authorities at a cost of $350,000 per ambulance. Health Minister Fuad Khan says the new development comes in light of the many problems and deficiencies in the National Ambulance Service. He says a procedure has been put in place to use the smaller ambulance units for shorter runs. He adds that at present, the regional health authorities can only transport patients from one public institution to another. Dr. Khan is revealing plans to put in a new policy where the new ambulances would be able to pick up citizens from any part of the regional health area that they serve and transport them to the public health institutions. When asked just how the patients would be screened to determine who should be able to access the services of the ambulance, Dr. Khan said the medical personnel will speak to patients and assess their conditions and make that decision. He says the ministry was hoping to do this through a Skype type of method. Meanwhile, the minister is also announcing that medical students, nurses, and medical practitioners would be able to access online journals for research and development. To access the e-library services, persons can now type www.health.gov.tt with the password Trinidad. Veena Bharath, News 4.
Food Production Minister the Honorable Devant Maharaj says he aims to revitalize the agriculture sector in an effort to reduce this country's food import bill and rising prices. The minister spoke at the Ministry of Tertiary Education's launch of an on-the-job training program in agriculture at Sangre Grande Regional Corporation.
Food Production Minister Devant Maharaj says he hopes that the new OJT agriculture program will help fill the void of food production in the country. Minister Maharaj points out that there is a shortage of farm labor, which developed in Trinidad and Tobago in the last decade. He adds that this issue will be addressed in this new program.
It seemed probable that the average size of farm units in Trinidad and Tobago would have been much larger if the farmers were able to obtain the quantity and quality of help they deem necessary for the best operation of the farms. We hope again that OJT would be able to fill this void. This conclusion assumes, of course, that any increase in the size of the farm, which has resulted from increased mechanization, which has also been encouraged by a scarcity of farm labor, has been more than offset by the inability of farmers to obtain adequate labor.
The minister says since the average level of mechanization does not appear to be excessive and further mechanization was practical, this should not only reduce farm labor requirements, but should also aid farmers in obtaining and retaining the satisfactory help required.
Attention to living and working conditions, particularly food, lodging, and hours of work, are very important in promoting good operator-labor relationships. Reasonable wages are also important, but wages that are higher than typical for the quality of help employed are not likely to aid the farmer in retaining satisfactory hired help.
He says the shortage of seasonal labor is the most aggravating form of labor problem currently plaguing the sector. The minister is urging farmers to give careful consideration to changing their farm organization so that less labor will be required and therefore will provide more employment.
It is in this context that an interministerial committee with a shared vision of the sector and country development came together to conceptualize OJT agriculture as a direct measure to intervene in the agricultural sector and to provide an expanded pool of labor and act as a direct form of subsidy to farm labor costs.
Minister Murad says the state will be subsidizing on farm labor deemed necessary and sufficient to rejuvenate the sector. Long-term and sustainable development, he says, will also be derived from the OJT agriculture program. Joseph Lopez, News 4.
Well, that's how we wrap up this edition of our News 4 report, a product of the Government Information Services Limited and the Ministry of Communications. I'm Nicola Barreto. Thank you so much for joining us.